Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Experts Live India podcast. My name is Samir, and today I'm joined by my teammate Jaromir Kasper. Hey Jaromir.
Hello, everyone.
So Jaromir and I, we're part of the same team here at Dell. The GEOS team stands for a long global engineering outreach specialists. What we do currently is we are part of a team or a part of a larger team that evangelizes all the Azure Stack, all the Dell hybrid cloud products, I guess. Azure, also VxRail, VMware, and X Nutanix, whatever, right? So today, what we're going to do is we have something really interesting. Um, Yaromir and I, we have been Yaromir, I think a little bit longer than me. We have been in IT. So I have been in IT for 6 years. Yaromir, what about you?
I'm a little bit older. So it's been, I don't know, 15 years, and maybe
Oh
since,
wow!
since I was 6 years, I was sitting behind the computer, but making money out of it. It's like, I don't know, 16 years or something like that.
Oh, nice, awesome. So that's like 10 years more than me. It's safe to say that we have some. I have some, and Yaromir has a lot of experience into IT administration. And today we're going to talk about, excuse me. Today we're going to talk about how the IT administration used to be, how it is today, and maybe how it will be in the future. Right. So tune in until the end, and we will get started straight away. Okay, Jaromir. So let's start by let's get to know you more. So what
Okay,
have you
so
recently been?
so we bring this topic just because of I wanted to a little bit describe my path and how I think it will evolve. So I started my journey as a regular IT guy who was plugging cables under the table, and making all of the printers work. And you probably know all of this because there are a lot of IT admins that started this very same way, right? Plugging stuff and just be curious about how the things work. And this is I started this doing when I was studying in university, right? And after that, I wanted to jump into the IT admin stuff. So basically, what I started with is just exploring how Active Directory works, all of this, now legacy stuff. And it kicked me out into this job where I was an IT admin, right? Because they were looking for someone. They wanted to, also uh, have someone on the team that they would teach something new. So then I spent some time, learning myself how to correctly do stuff, how Active Directory works, how the print service works, and all of the file shares, permissions, and NTFS, and all of this kind of basic stuff now.
Yeah.
And then I just shifted in one more company when I was IT admin for Central and Eastern Europe, and then Microsoft. I spent there like a 9.5 years, and the biggest change for me, this is something I would like to describe as an admin of the present, is that I discovered the PowerShell, right?
Okay.
And moreover, I discovered the way that you should manage your service the modern way, right? And this is what would be like a now. And the future is now what we are living now in Dell, right? Because the future is obviously a hybrid. So this is also something we would like to talk to together to describe you how it's going from the present into this future of hybrid world.
Okay. Awesome. So when we say IT admin, do you mean are we specific talking about Windows IT admin?
Oh yeah, probably right. So maybe admin IT in the IT enterprise because I know a lot of admins that are doing in the small companies the IT
Right.
stuff and they are like a Swiss tool, right? they
Yeah.
are they are configuring their microkey devices. They are doing the security. They are doing their maybe identity services like Active Directory, maybe some Azure. They are managing Office 365. So these are Swiss tools. So maybe not these guys, but maybe a little bit more about the Windows IT admins in the enterprise. So this was also my journey, so I understand it well. I'm not so universal as these Swiss knife guys. So
Yeah,
I would like to
sure.
describe these enterprise IT admins of the Windows devices, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about IT admins, I think the term is very inclusive. It's very broad. You can call anyone an IT admin, right? So
Oh,
you may be
nowadays probably, yeah. But, but
you may be
definitely,
working on servers, networks, software, hardware. I mean, still you are an IT
There's a
admin.
load. It's a broad topic, right? So, and nowadays, I can feel that the on-premises world is shrinking. So, nowadays, everyone will have to be more or less like a universal. So, you will have to
Yeah,
know something about identity, something about automation, something about a clustering, something about this and that. Um, so, it's being a little bit smaller now, because everything is now moving into the cloud. But
right.
now, I can feel that there will be a need for the IT admins, the traditional Windows admins, because with the Azure Stack ACI, which is working basically on three things. One is Hyper-V, one is failover clustering, and one is Windows PowerShell. I think this is the present, right, where you have all of these three tool sets that are universal for any Windows admin. And once you know all these three topics, you are able to manage almost anything, in my
Yeah.
humble opinion, right?
No, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about Azure Stack HCA, now that you have brought the topic up, it is since the inception. I think it starts from the hardware components,
Yeah,
because you have to purchase the specialized integrated or validated hardware for Azure Stack HCI, and
right.
then on top of it you run your softwares, your operating systems or whatever. So again, that now you could make an argument whether that is part of an IT admin's responsibilities or not. But definitely, at least setting up the cluster, it starts right from there. Once you get the hardware, you access it and you start making your clusters.
Yeah, it's something you should understand, right? Because when you are troubleshooting something, then you need to understand how it's working, right? So it helps you a lot to understand how the thing is deployed, because you'll be able to understand how to troubleshoot it better. And maybe
Yeah,
let's go a little bit into the past, right? Because I would love to talk about the IT admin of the past a little bit,
yeah,
and how it kind of evolved into the IT admin of the present. I can feel that when I started doing IT admin, all of the tool sets were just MMC consoles. Basically, everything you can click,
yeah.
and I spent there like a lot of time, right? So, and you can say that when you are configuring something like that, click next, and when you are doing some documentation, it's a hell, right? And
It is.
repeatability or any kind of searching in this documentation, it's a pain, right? And especially if you are doing something like, I need to create, I don't know, 20 users, and these 20 users should be in this and that organization unit. Maybe I will need to create some hierarchy. Maybe I need to repeat this for the new branch, right? So this was probably first time I was using the PowerShell was when were setting up the new branch in a new country, and we wanted to repeat the structure and all of the, I would say, privileges, permissions on organization units as we had in different branches, right? And to repeat that, I started with the PowerShell, right? I just wrote a really stupid PowerShell script that was like a multi-liner script. It was not doing any loops, but it just
It works.
created commands in Excel, basically, replacing the words. And this was the first thing I did with the automation, and then I started to feel that without automation it will not be possible, right? I mean, and documentation in the end, right? And this
Absolutely.
is what I started with. Is I started to describe all of my knowledge that I've learned into some kind of documents, and it ultimately evolved into the MS Lab, right? With
Oh yeah.
MS Lab, I started to write some tool, and then I wanted to describe all my journey with all of the Microsoft technologies. And the way I did it, I just wrote the PowerShell script, right, that anyone can read. So it's not like invoke web request is not like ICW or whatever it is, invoke web request as a short word, because you can, in a PowerShell, you can do a lot of shortages, right? So you can just have a
Yes.
single liner that is this short, but no one is able to read
Nobody
it, right?
understands it. Yeah.
and
I
and
know.
this way, if you will describe the environment, it's really universal and anyone can read it. And this is, I think, this is the IT admin of the today's, right? As an IT admin of today's, you should be able to create a documentation that is readable by your colleagues, reusable by you if you need to do something again, and shareable. And you know, the operations of this, of the script where you have to recreate something, it's essential, right? I think it's essential skill in today's world. And this is, if you don't know anything about the PowerShell, if you want to start, we started to write these Dell Geos hands-on labs with MS Lab. Basically, it will teach you how to work with MS Lab, and then it will teach you how to deploy a just a KCI cluster. And there's one really nice example when you can deploy a just a KCI cluster with Windows Admin Center, which is a GUI, click next next, and then you can deploy it with a PowerShell, right? And
Yes.
once you experience this difference, I think you will understand why the
You
PowerShell
can
is
vouch for that. Yes, I
important.
can vouch for it. Yeah, because as part of my recent projects, I've done both. So initially, because like everybody, I came from, well, at least like from most people, I came from a IT admin background, so I didn't know a lot about coding or PowerShell. To be honest, I was actually a little hesitant or a little afraid of PowerShell in the beginning, because anytime I would see a piece of code or a script, my mind would just turn off. It's like, I don't know this, I don't understand this, right? So, I've come from the GUI world. I've come from the people who like to click,
Yeah,
um, but
like every admin, right? It's
like every
it's
admin,
true
yes,
for every admin, right? So every admin likes to click something, and it's still relevant, right? When you need to learn something about how it works, what is behind this technology, it's better to see it in UI, right? To understand the steps, right?
yes.
So it's still relevant to do something in a GUI. I still do, for example, in SCVMM that I really like is where you can click next something, and it will spit out a piece of code that you can recycle, right? But
Oh,
you have
nice.
an understanding of what steps are needed, so you can then try to experiment with the PowerShell. That's totally still relevant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was deploying that thing, so when I was deploying an Azure Stack HCI cluster, so I've done it the both ways. First, I've done it with the Windows Admin Center, which took me like a whole day probably. Clicking, a lot of clicking, a lot of inputs at each stages, at each wizard, you have to input something maybe, and it took me like maybe 100 200 clicks.
Yeah.
But then of course I made use of, when the next time I did it, I used MS Labs. It's just a ready-made piece of code that you've written. So I just went ahead. So at this point, I have some understanding of PowerShell. So I am able to read a little bit of PowerShell, so I can understand it now. So I went ahead, made some minor changes. If it's any relevant to me, I inputted, all the different parameters if I had to, and then just hit deploy, and everything was done for me. By the end, I was like, maybe in an hour, everything end to end, everything is configured and all is done.
Yeah, and this is the way to learn PowerShell, right? To have some consistent known, well working script, right, where you don't have to touch anything, and it
Yeah.
will do something consistently. That's why I wrote this MS Lab, so you don't have to modify anything, and you will see the result, right? And then you can transform the same script for the production, or you can adjust the MS Lab to use different names, different domain, and you can start adjusting your script. And this way you will learn. And ultimately, what you can do is you will be able to deploy some real world production with even more. Um, I would say variables, right? Because when you do the real stuff deployment, it's completely different from this isolated lab. But at least you will know how it works when it works, right? So you are able to compare, and you are able to train yourself, and you are able to, write a script that will, destroy entire domain, right? And if
Yes.
you need to, redo it, and then I just made a mistake. I just deleted all the objects in Active Directory, right? So MS Lab, what it will allow you is to clean up and deploy again into the consistent state. So yeah, it's a really good playground, I would say, where you
Absolutely, and
can.
I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest fear, is that if I use PowerShell, I will break something that is catastrophic, right? So if I don't understand something and if I run that script, because running script can be scary sometimes, especially the scripts that you don't understand.
Yeah, if it's a get, it's okay. If it's set, yeah, be
Yeah,
cautious. If it's
exactly.
delete, then it's or
Exactly.
remove.
Yeah. So that's what I do, right? So when I see a script, when I try to evaluate, so is it safe to run? If it's just a bunch of get statements, that's okay. What it's gonna do is probably just gonna fetch some results for me. If it doesn't exist, it will just error out, and that's that.
But
But
this will make you like how to say, you will have guts to run it in the production after you will try it 10
yes,
times in this virtual environment. So this is the reason, right? Actually, you can try and try and try until you'll be really until you will really know what you are doing, right? And you
yeah,
will be so confident that you will be able to run it in production after you run it like 20 times in lab, right?
yes, absolutely. So Yaromir, so when did you start writing MS Labs?
It's like 5 6 years ago, but believe me, my code was like really really ugly. I mean, I spent it's good thing that if you are able to find some kind of mentor who will show you how to correctly write a code, or if you just reuse some scenarios, you can just try rewriting it. Because when I was starting writing the code, even the just the way I was writing it was just wrong. I mean, it was just wrong. When I just see, I still have some code somewhere hidden. If I want to show it, maybe I will just maybe
No,
sometimes
no,
show
I
it.
understand because I'm in your shoes right now.
Yeah. So, but the good thing is you have now a lot of examples that are end-to-end examples that you can recycle, and please do it, right. It's open
Yes.
license. You can recycle it for your code. You can fork it. You can create your own project. Anyone can just start learning this way, and this will just move you like lights year away from the traditional admin, right. So you will have big I would say benefit when compared to other IT admins, right.
Yeah.
And then now we are almost talking about this IT admin of the future, right. IT admin of the future will probably not click much, right, because you will
No.
probably click only just to see, just to check how the environment looks like, if everything is healthy or not, right. But when you will be troubleshooting or when you will be fixing something, it will be code, right. And the better, it should be something like a DevOps project where you have a code or infrastructure as a code, where you describe your infrastructure as a code. And if you want to modify something, you'll just modify the code, put it into the test, and then put it into the production, right. So something like that for the IT admin also will be the similar as for any application writer that is now writing the code in a GitHub and basically deploying in the production, or deploying first test and then production into some Kubernetes cluster, right? So we will
Yeah.
do probably the same when managing the infrastructure. And with hybrid infrastructure, it's still, we will be still relevant, right? I can feel that because with hybrid infrastructure with Azure Stack HCI, you are much more free. You can choose whatever CPU you want. You can choose whatever graphic card combination you want. You can choose your combination of this fast or slow disks. If you want to have HDDs, if you want to have HDDs with NVMe's, or just all flash NVMe's, or the sizes, and then you can spin your own way cluster hardware in your location, what is close that is close to your users, especially now with Azure Virtual Desktop, for example, right. You can spin your virtual desktop just next to your workload. That might be some really really fast SQL database that is running on premises, because it's just faster maybe than Azure, and maybe cheaper, right.
Yeah.
So and you want to have your users just next to it, because they are doing some kind of analysis, and you need to have like a small latency in not in milliseconds, but maybe in microseconds, right. So all of these things will be still relevant, and as you can see on the market, Azure is huge, that's for sure, but
Yeah.
on premises is still a huge number, right.
Oh
And
yeah.
which is, I think that when I can feel now that Windows IT admin is a little bit how to say, abandoned, right, because everything is now Azure. But we can feel that the future will bring you hybrid, which is in the end failover cluster, PowerShell, and Hyper-V, right?
Hyper-V. Yeah. hmm Yeah. So you said something interesting earlier. Is that you said that on-premise technologies are shrinking. I do kind of agree with that. There's been a lot of people moving on to not only Azure but also keeping it hybrid or keeping it multi-cloud. Speaking of moving on to Azure or any other public cloud, what do you think, or in your experience in the last 10 years or 5 years, whatever, have you seen any technology like disappear, go away because it's simply not being used anymore?
Like from on premises, like
Yeah, mostly
Exchange,
I would
right?
say.
Exchange is like a dying because who wants to have an email on the premises, right?
Mm,
It's like,
yeah,
come on. The same with Teams, right? All of this link, or what was it? The tool that I think it was Link. I think was it
yeah, the Microsoft, the older one.
the older one? Yeah, before the
Yeah,
Teams,
yeah,
right?
yes,
We
yes,
don't know the name anymore, right? So
yeah,
all of this disappeared, right? So
yeah.
so I can imagine that there will be a lot of things like maybe a file shares, file server for the users. Like why? Because you have
Mhm.
everything in OneDrive, right?
Right.
Nowadays in SharePoint.
Okay.
Um, or similar technologies, right? So the regular file share, no one is probably using. We can use it in the infrastructure as a FSLogic's location, right? So when you need to store the profile, for example, for AVD, then you will use FSLogics and the file share. But it's for the infrastructure, it's not for the users. So anything that is visible for the users will be probably going into the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So AVD probably I like the part in the AVD where the Microsoft is managing the load balancers, is managing all
Hmm.
of the uh, web access and everything. This is in Azure, and this is super awesome because you don't have to care about the scale, you don't have to care about the certificates or anything like that. You can still deploy it with a PowerShell, and you can still have your Azure Virtual Desktop on premises. At least partially, right? The session host can be on premises on Azure Stack ACR cluster. So and still that's where the IT admin is relevant, and still you need to have someone who will maintain all of these things like access system or cameras or something like that. It's you cannot offload it. It's easier and cheaper to have someone on premises that will handle all of these small things. So
Right.
maybe it'll be again the universal Swiss tools, IT admins that will do more things, but it will be always like a little bit of cloud, more or less. Applications, maybe a lot of applications will be in the cloud, but still there's a lot of stuff that it needs to run on premises, right?
On premises,
So,
yeah. I actually, funnily enough, I remember an incident. Well, I call it an incident, but there was a recent meeting I had with the customer. They were looking to migrate some of their public-facing applications to Azure, and the reason was very interesting. The IT admin was on the call, and we asked them, "So why are you moving this workload to cloud?" And he said, "Because management wants us to."
yeah, that's we can hear this all a lot of times, right? And it's not so simple because with Azure, if you want to save money or if you want to have it on the same price as you have it on premises, you have to modernize your applications.
Yeah,
But often I can see that application is just running on some Windows server that no one is touching and just updating it once a month. And
yeah.
management will just say, no, 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 let's go to Azure because someone told us it will be cheaper. It's not true. It's
That
not
is
true.
not true. That's what we were trying to tell them. Is like, okay, so we understand that you're. I think it is more. That particular meeting was more of a trend because the management wanted to be trendy.
Yep,
They
top
were,
500 companies are in Azure,
yeah.
you know.
So the IT admin he said actually, so we don't really have any problem with this. We've been running these applications on these systems for last 20 years without an incident.
And
But
still, if you
now,
have offices, you still have networks, right? You still have their like wired networks everywhere. So you probably also have a server room. And with the small footprint of Azure Stack HCI, you can have just four use with four use, you can have four node cluster.
yeah,
It doesn't consume almost anything. It's probably size of your switches in the server room, and the performance is awesome. And you can still host most of your workload you had on servers for infrastructure for forever, even the applications, right? So this data center modernization kind of makes sense. There will be even more things that you want to have on the edge, and you want to have it secure. Maybe you have some lines that are producing stuff, and you cannot have it consistently connected into the Azure, right? you need to query your database of your components when you are manufacturing something. You cannot rely on connection. Probably someone will, okay, you can have multiple connective connections into the Azure, but you want, maybe you want to have low latency, maybe you want to have it partially in Azure, partially on premises. If something goes wrong, you can just switch off to Azure as a backup, something like that. But it will be probably always some kind of combination.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So again, going back to my question, I asked you about the five, about some dying technologies that you can think of. The I guess the flip of that question is, what do you think, in your opinion, are the five rising, or let's say three rising technologies for today and for future? If you want to be future proof, what should you
So
upgrade
future
in?
proof, right? I guess Kubernetes. Everyone is
Oh,
talking about it.
absolutely.
It
Yeah.
has also some downsides, right? I was talking recently with my colleague, and he told me a story of some company where they basically had a custom developed application for Kubernetes. They deployed it. The company that developed it, I don't know, they kind of ended, something like that. And now they are not able to redeploy the application because of the new APIs in Azure. So
Oh no.
maybe with Windows Server that has 10 years support, 5+5, you will have even more time when this kind of company will write you an application and it will go away, because still this is relevant. But yes, Kubernetes for sure. I would definitely take a look into this hyperconverged systems. It doesn't matter which one, right? But it's the way. It's simpler. You just have your 4 nodes, 2 nodes, 1 node, even if it is just a KTI, and you can host your Kubernetes applications and even more from Azure. I guess this will be even more simplified. Now it requires Active Directory and all of this infrastructure. Maybe in the future it will be different. So definitely, I will take a look into the Azure Stack HCI or any other HCI solution, how it works, if you are able to manage it. Okay, if you're not, just take a look in the labs we prepared. The third one, I don't know,
Maybe the SaaS
probably
project.
network. If you know how to configure your networks, you will be always relevant because it will be always needed. In your house, starting with your house, right? You need to know how to configure the Wi-Fi correctly. And if
Yes.
you want to start with something, I have, for example, microkicks, and these are really good because it goes really deep dive. It's like a Cisco, but just for a few bucks, right? And you can configure all of the VLANs and everything, all of the security firewall rules. So network, it will be always essential.
Awesome. And I was going to say, maybe software as a service offering as a whole, because we've been saying a lot of companies are moving on to Azure or public cloud, and they're, in the cloud, they're like ready-made services that you can just consume. You don't have to
Yeah.
set them up. You don't have to troubleshoot them. You don't have to fix them, right? So you can just go ahead and consume them. So I think you will have to also be a little more proficient about software as a service and how to consume something out of the cloud.
Oh, that's for sure. There are so many cloud services that are really useful. So definitely, if you want to be relevant, you need to understand your business, your company business, and how to help the company to save money
Yeah.
and be more agile or whatever. That because you are not here just to do Windows updates. You, as an IT admin, should help your company to grow, right? Um,
Yes.
you just need to learn the proper tool set, because if you will not you help your company, and if you will just maintain your stuff, you will just die.
Yes. That is true.
it's it's
Absolutely.
you need to be a benefit, because otherwise you'll be just I would say a bill, or
Dependent.
um, yeah, you'll just be a number, right? this
Yeah.
this admin cost this because he's managing this. Let's move this stuff into the Azure, and we will not have to
Pay for this
pay
guy.
for this
Yeah.
guy, right? Because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only thing he does is maintaining this on-premises infrastructure. So this will not be this will not be longer relevant. This guy has to be the guy that can host the Kubernetes for this application, and we'll be able to set up the infrastructure that will save the money because you will be using it smart way. So maybe you will save something from Azure. Maybe you will be able to improve the performance of your applications. Maybe make it highly available. If you will just have partially application on premises, partially on in Azure. So you can have like a VM and just back it up into Azure if something goes wrong. If you will have some big maintenance, if you will move the object somewhere else, you can just spin it in Azure, have it there, and just move it back. Yeah, but you need to be the guy that the management is talking to when they decide what to do
Knows
next,
the
right?
stuff. Yeah, you should be knowledgeable about the latest and greatest.
And you should be able to help them, right? So
Yeah,
especially like if you want to make your also users happy, right? If you are, for example, deploying Windows 11, whatever, you should consider using the modern management way, right? There's a entire document in docs about modernization of the user workstation, right? It's no longer tightening down your laptops for the users. So it needs to be any like any other laptop that you can buy from the shop that will last for 10 hours and will open the Outlook in no time. It has to be this device, right?
yeah,
You cannot have a device where you cannot install anything. It's you can only open the Outlook. It doesn't make sense to have this kind of laptop for users, right?
yeah,
The user has to be able to work. They have to be able to work for with a battery that lasts, and with a laptop that is not noisy. Otherwise, they will just access their Outlook from their iPads.
yes, right. So, Yaromir, we're actually nearing towards the end here, but there's before I let you go, I wanted to ask you another question quickly. So, we've spoken about PowerShell a lot in the session today. What else would you say is also important weapon to have in your in your arsenal, Mr. PowerShell? So there's a lot of things going on with APIs nowadays.
APIs, yes, ARM templates in Azure. Definitely, you want to deploy everything with a template. Probably also Project Bicep. I also need to deep dive into it because it's a different way to create the templates than ARM templates with
Right,
just some kind of language closer, more maybe closer into the PowerShell, where because in the PowerShell you write it the way you write it, but ARM template is just a big configuration file that is a little
right.
bit ugly, describing a lot of stuff.
It's a JSON file, right?
It's a JSON. Yeah, you're right. It's a JSON
Yeah.
file. So um, yeah, but
We
definitely
work.
I would try to look into your company what you can improve and just try to search the best tool for it. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. That is golden advice. So let's leave on that note. So again, thanks so much, Jaromir, for joining us today. Hopefully, you would also be willing to join us for some other interesting topics.
Anytime.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
See you.
Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye bye.